Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Till. The SEC Power Rankings for Week 7 kind of got put on their head a little bit. You go back 7 days ago when we were putting together these Power Rankings heading into Week 6, we felt like we were on top of the world. We thought we knew this conference really, really well. After Saturday, like this SEC, it's kind of the Wild West, and we're not used to be seeing all the parity in the SEC, and I think you're kind of getting that in the 2024 year. I think there are a lot of teams that can make some waves in this conference. Now, I want to start with maybe a few hot takes right off the bat. Dill, I know you have plenty of problems with my power rankings here. Vanderbilt, pretty low, right? And I think there will be some people upset with that. And Dill, I went to graduate school at Vanderbilt. I'm a Vandy guy. Well, not really, but kind of. Dill, I don't want people to forget that this Vanderbilt team did lose to Georgia State. I like Vanderbilt. They are much better than we are used to seeing Vanderbilt, but I'm not ready to put them in the national top 25. I'm not ready to say they're a contender in the SEC. I think that had a lot more to do with Alabama sleepwalking into that football game after a big win against Georgia and not just not being ready to play. And Vanderbilt's a good enough team where they can get you if you're not ready to play. But I'm not ready to put Vanderbilt as a contender or dark horse in the SEC deal. I'm sure you have many other problems. Fired up to get into it now. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the SEC fans. It's been a wild last couple of weeks in this conference. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section, Dill. I'll give you can go anywhere you want here. You can attack my rankings. Where do you want to start first?
So I actually am comfortable with your top six, it looks like. I think Texas is the one team that hasn't shown, I would argue, a glaring weakness in a sense. I
Yes.
mean, you've seen some real issues. Again, for Tennessee, is Nico the guy? I mean, it was one game that they've really asked him to do it and put the game on his shoulders. Didn't come up in the way I think he needed to come up, left too many plays in the field. And then you obviously got Bam with that defense. And then Georgia, you're not seeing the same Carson Beck. So I think I'm comfortable putting Texas up there, kind of in the category alone. I think they've looked the part. But I also am kind of with you. I mean, those next three teams, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, they're right there. And I think any given day can very easily beat Texas.
100%. The reason I went with that top contender right now is kind of exactly what you said. You look at Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, the teams that we had as contenders 7 days ago, top contenders. We kind of had them as top contenders because they didn't really show that many flaws. And now you look at those three teams and exactly what you just said, there are flaws. There are question marks about these teams. Now, Texas, I'm not saying we won't see some question marks for this Texas program at some point in 2024, but you look at how they're constructed. Like Quinn Ewers coming back healthy. He's one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in this conference. Elite offensive line, a defense that has gotten better from last year, and that's a hot take, but it is facts. Like, I think this unit is better than what they were last year. Texas is the most complete team as we sit. Now, Dill, kind of differentiating Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, do you have a problem with that order? The reason I went with this order is I look at Tennessee and just say, it's a small sample size. Like the question we have is, can Nico be the guy to go win a national championship, to go compete at the top of the SEC? I've followed this kid going back to his sophomore year in high school. I think he can be that guy. I think they still have an elite caliber defense. I still think they have an offensive line, albeit struggled a little bit against Arkansas and can run the football. Nico had that opportunity to go try to win a football game. He kind of had to go win a football game. He didn't. But I still have confidence that, a first-year starter can get better as 2024 goes on. And for that reason, I'm kind of leaving Tennessee as the number 2 team in the SEC.
And I still think that defense is really good. And if you
Yes.
go watch that Arkansas game, it wasn't exactly like a ton of easy stuff from Tennessee. They had a couple snafus in the secondary, leaving guys kind of open. But most of the time, it was just Arkansas making plays. I mean, Taylor Green was making big time throws. Number 2 for Arkansas, Blaine.
Yeah, Andrew Armstrong's a dude.
He's a monster. He's making a ton of big time plays. So I don't think that's an elite defense. And I look at the other two teams. I think Alabama certainly has an elite offense. I mean, you're brutal questions about what that defense is going to be moving forward. And then Georgia, I don't know if that offense is good enough unless they get into a better rhythm. So I think, again, one moment of Nico not playing his best football is probably the one issue you've seen from Tennessee. Now you've seen a couple games of Alabama playing not even close to what they should be on defense. And frankly, Georgia's offense hasn't looked particularly great all season.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of questions with like Alabama. It's really it's the defense, and I think the most shocking aspect about Alabama playing Vanderbilt was I didn't really see them dominate Vanderbilt along the lines of scrimmage. Like, who are their difference makers on the defensive
Well, they
line? And
need
you,
more defensive ends who look like Quindarius Robinson, in my opinion. I mean, you just saw the lack of speed, the lack of
yeah,
athleticism, something that's been such a staple from Alabama's defensive ends for a couple of years, for like a lot of years now, I should say. You just don't. I don't feel like you had that. I mean, their inability to stop that option attack and be athletic and get out to the boundary, like very, very
look at
difficult.
all the former SEC championship defenses, difference makers in the front seven. And they got some difference makers at linebacker that I think were just confused at what Vanderbilt was kind of throwing at them. Like, I'm not out on Jahad Campbell or Deontay Lawson, like two really good football players. But on the defensive line, to me, it just looked like they lacked that elite aspect to them. And you look at historically in the SEC, like that matters. You look at Georgia, you look at the past Alabama teams that have won SEC championships, and pretty much for the last 10 years outside of the Joe Burrow LSU year where they had some difference makers on the defensive line. That's my problem with Alabama. And I think another thing that is not getting talked enough about with Georgia, that offensive line is not what we're used to seeing. We've kind of talked about that. So you look at Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, big time question mark still. The team that I find most fascinating in this contender category is Texas A&M. What happens if the version of Connor Wigman that we saw against Missouri, who was just in control of the offense, the ball was coming out quick on time, what happens if we get that Connor Wigman the rest of 2024?
No, I
That's
think
me
I
that
think the question will be is like, is he that guy when he plays really, really good defense? And you can
yes.
go back to the Miami game. That was probably one of the moments, like against a really good defensive line who was getting a lot of pressure on him. He looked really, really good, stood tall, and made things happen. Then you go to that Notre Dame game, kind of a similar situation, just with a better secondary. And he plays a game that you can't win football games when you have a quarterback playing that way. So again, I think Texas A&M belongs in this contender series. I wouldn't put them down into that other slot, the dark horse slot, but I do still think that question is kind of out there. The offensive line, I still question if they play really, really good defensive lines. Do they have what it takes? So again, there's some serious things about A&M, especially on the offense side of the ball, that you can question. But I think that win very convincing, obviously over Missouri. I think that puts them into that
What I'm
conversation.
saying is, like, if that's the Connor Wigman we get the rest of 2024, if that's the offensive line, and that's one of the more underspoken aspects about this Texas A&M team, that was an offensive line that was a disaster in 2023. It looks phenomenal,
Well,
especially the
and
last.
again, I think that has to be adjusted because it did not look phenomenal against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's kind of the class of the defensive lines that I think you're going to see and need to see. Like when they go play a
Do
team
you
like
not see,
Tennessee,
at least what the way I look at it is Adam Cushing comes into this Texas A&M offensive line. I've seen consistent, steady improvement from this Texas A&M offensive line throughout 2024. Like,
I need to see a legit SEC defensive line. I think Missouri, the way they're playing up front, really, really disappointing. So again, I'm not like I agree with where you have A&M, but I still need to see more from that that offensive line quarterback duo. Because again, when I saw that Notre Dame game, Notre Dame's not a team that's exactly suffocating everyone right now. They looked horrible.
yeah, that's fair. And then you look at Ole Miss. This is a team that I think people are just sleeping on. I think they lost to Kentucky at home, and everybody wrote them off. This defense is good. This defense is really, really good. And if this offense can find its form, which again, the pieces are there, the play caller and Lane Kiffin's there, I think this team can be a force. I think all five of those teams in that contender category, legitimate shots to be an SEC caliber, SEC championship caliber team at some point in 2024, if it does come together. Now, getting into the dark horse category,
Okay, I got to start off. Your disrespect for the Razorbacks is preposterous.
who do you have them over? I thought it was higher.
I have them over all four of these teams. I think Arkansas is one team that they probably should have won every game they played. Even A&M, like they gave them all they could handle. I think again, like their offensive line certainly not what it needs to be. But if Taylor Green and they get that type of performance that he put on against Tennessee, where he's not turning the ball over, this team is well more capable of beating anyone in the SEC than all four of these teams. Because all four of these teams, I think, for right now, I kind of look like there's some glaring holes that I don't really think are fixable. I think LSU's defense, not fixable. Oklahoma's offensive line, not fixable. Missouri's level of play, I don't like. They better get something
Well,
rolling because they look
Missouri's the
horrible
weird
right
one
now.
because I think that Missouri has like the personnel to be a contender. They just haven't played like the start 2024. Now, going back to Arkansas real quick, you act like they don't have any glaring holes. I think the Arkansas fans would be the first one to admit Taylor Green can be a glaring hole for this Arkansas team. Like Taylor Green is a roller coaster. We saw him play really good football against Tennessee. You go back to the game against Auburn, like there was some really bad football. And so I like the ceiling of Arkansas. When Taylor Green is playing to the best of his ability, this is a very dangerous team. But I think we have to recognize that there's a large sample size of Taylor Green going back to his time at Boise State where he's not necessarily playing that level of football. I
But
like
I kind
Arkansas.
of look. I look at Arkansas. I think their defense is probably the best unit out of all four of these teams. And Oklahoma
Besides Oklahoma,
certainly
yeah.
gives them a run for their money.
Well, Oklahoma's better than Arkansas in defense.
Didn't look like it against Tennessee. I mean, they really stifled Tennessee. Did like we have
Because Arkansas's offense could stay on the football field. I mean, you go back to Oklahoma, they just couldn't stay on the football field.
It's definitely fair. So you can't compare apples to apples. But
no,
I look at what that Ole Miss or Arkansas defense, I should say, can do. Travis Williams, I think he's coaching his way up into a really big job next year. I just look. I think Oklahoma, Arkansas probably comparable on defense. I think Arkansas's offense should be.
I don't think Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's. I'm taking Oklahoma's defense.
Well, agree to disagree.
Agree to. Hey, that's what college football. That's what college football is about. And again, to wrap up our disagreement on Arkansas and a bow. You said they could have won every single game. I think there's some truth to that, but I even look at that Auburn game and say they probably didn't deserve to win that football game. This Arkansas team is the ceiling is high, but it's a roller coaster of a ride. And then you look at the rest of these teams, and it's just kind of like the why you have the tiers is one. I think the talent level. There's a gap. Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M from just a size, speed, strength category, I think are just in better spots than some of these teams. But I also think these questions are a lot bigger and arguably not fixable. You know what I mean? Like I think there are some things about Georgia in Alabama, in Tennessee. Those are problems that I look at and say, I could see it getting better throughout 2024. I look at LSU's defense and say, I don't know how that thing's getting better. Like, I just don't think they have the personnel to be a very good defense in the SEC. I look at Oklahoma. I don't think that Oklahoma offensive line is getting any better. I just don't think they have the dudes there. And Kentucky
is a weird one because, like, I don't exactly know why they can't be really good, but, like, I just don't think they are. I don't think the top-end talent, like the way they recruit, their ability to get guys on the field at every position that can kind of compete with an Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, those type of squads, it just doesn't feel there. But then again, like week in and week out, they kind of go challenge those squads.
Also, side note, we were talking about elite defenses. Probably should have thrown Kentucky in there. We were talking about Arkansas, Oklahoma. That Kentucky defense has been, you look at what they did against Georgia, and you look at what they did against Ole Miss. That South Carolina game, I think, is a one-off because their offensive line just like pissed down their pants that whole game. This Kentucky defense can make some noise too. Now, the problems are
South Carolina even score a ton of points on offense. It's just they got the ball.
That's what. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Pick sixes is just chaos.
So looking at the bottom tier here, and I can see South Carolina fans being pissed off about it.
Yeah, count me as one of those South Carolina fans.
I'll give you the T-box here.
I mean, they just. I think this is a defense that's legitimately really, really good.
Yes.
Their offense, like, if we're going to talk about Arkansas being a roller coaster, I mean, there have been moments where Sellers plays the way I think you need to play.
Like,
it's definitely not been consistent enough, but, like, I feel like you've seen the flashes. And again, maybe I'm looking at that LSU game and I'm probably not, frankly, giving enough credit to how weak LSU's defense is when I kind of think about Will Linder. So that might be fair, but those two defensive ends, that secondary, their ability to be disruptive, I feel like that's a team that probably belongs up in that other. And if for no other reason, I think it's way different than certainly those other last three teams. Let's say.
Yeah, you could throw Auburn and South Carolina up in that dark horse category because, and even I mean, I just think, quite frankly, Mississippi State is the team that it's like if they weren't used to talking about Vanderbilt as a team that don't belong, like that. This is
Yeah.
Mississippi State this year. They're very very bad. My thing with South Carolina is find me something you believe in with this offense. Like when you look at Oklahoma, there's some things that you can believe in. When you look at Kentucky,
Mhm.
there, oh, but like South Carolina, it's really really poor offensive line with a quarterback that I think can be good, but hasn't necessarily been consistently good. They can't run the football very effectively, even with a quarterback like Lenore Sellers, and then the pass catchers on the outside just really struggle to make plays. There's just not a ton when I look at South Carolina on offense for me to believe in. I think the defense is really good. I'm kind of with you on that. And why I have Auburn over them is I think Auburn's actually like from a talent level, pretty solid team. Uh, that's been one concern. Like I've been a Hugh Freeze believer. Like you can see the talent is changing with this Auburn team, but for them to just not play up to their talent level pretty much all of 2024 so far, that's concerning. Because what have we always been saying about Auburn is, hey, give it till 2025. This team's going to be ready to compete at the top of the SEC from a talent
You
level.
gotta get a little taste of winning, though. I think you're right. At the
Yeah,
end of the day, I mean, they've got guys who like every big spot. Their quarterbacks have made horrific mistakes. They're playing tight games to teams they shouldn't be playing tight games with. I am kind of with you. I mean, as much as like this team talented down and can kind of compete in probably more of that contender class, it's like they're not. They don't
what
win
would
any.
Auburn, how would you feel about Auburn if we just grab Cam Ward from Miami and put him on Auburn's offense for the rest of the year? Like do you think the team around him
That would
is
actually make me sick to think about it a little bit if I was an Auburn
well,
fan.
the thing is, I think that's what Hugh Freeze's plan is next year. You know,
Yeah.
I because you look at this team and say a lot of these guys are going to be back in 2025. This is going to be the year I think they push their chips in. Not they've been doing it on the recruiting trail. I think they're going to do it in the transfer portal for a quarterback and some more surrounding pieces. You're kind of right. It's just when you got a quarterback that we said this about Michigan. We're Michigan fans.
I was
Like
gonna
when you
say.
just got like a loser quarterback play, when the moment's big, like the quarterback just don't show up. It's kind of where Auburn's at right now. Vanderbilt, Florida, Mississippi State to round it out. Again, this is not me. I feel like I was too hard on Vandy to start this. There are aspects of Vandy that I really do like. I think Diego Pavi is an absolute guy.
We'll talk about a winner at the quarterback spot.
Yes, yeah, 100% agree. In Florida, again, there's some aspects of Florida that I like too. But when you have an offensive line like that, and this defense, Florida seems to be a little. And I'm not buying stock back in Florida after a win against UCF, and then Mississippi State flat out stinks. Group of 5 caliber team. We'll close it out there. A lot of hot takes. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.